Item number 9 on the agenda is the discussion of the incorporating or discussing to incorporate an anti-nepotism policy. We all had received this information prior to. You have had the someone like to open the discussion? Brenda's drafted it.
Yes, this policy we drafted a little while ago, a few months ago. Basically, it does not prohibit the employment of a relative by the town, but it sets forth a policy that preference will not be given to candidates who are relatives of current employees. And then it also states that the town of Cicero shall not employ a relative where certain circumstances are present. And the main one is where an employee would be in a position to supervise a relative, or be in a position to hire, appoint, remove, or discipline a relative. Also where an employee would be responsible for auditing or evaluating the work of a relative, or where there would be other conflicts of interest that would be created by the employment of the relative. The rest of the policy just just sets up guidelines for how the town would handle the situation where a relative would apply for employment. It would basically go to the comptroller to make a recommendation. And then there is one thing that we need to correct in this. There's a little inconsistency in the way that it's drafted currently. It either we need to go to the town board or the supervisor, so you need to decide who you would want to have make the final decision on whether there's a conflict that would prohibit the employment of a relative. And then the last part of it is just the definition of what is a relative.
We're also going to include the word domestic partner.
Yes, we can do that. And I think we've also discussed, since I circulated this, the idea of accepting or exempting current employees. They would be grandfathered.
So the adoption would be determined from that day forward.
Exactly.
Brenda, can you speak to the issue of how this would affect department heads? One could look at a department head as the supervisor of all employees or potential employees within the department, even though there might be other supervisors.
I guess I'm not sure what your question is. Would the department head be considered a supervisor? Is that what you mean? I think so, yes.
Have an example?
I didn't want to use Chris as an example.
That's okay.
Doesn't matter to me.
So in other words, if that supervisor, there is no other department heads. I mean, he would be as Wayne would be, as Tracy would be, as Jody would be, the sole person in charge. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Well, highway department has other supervisors, though. I mean, that's a large department, and so you've got a couple supervisors.
Usually it's my foreman. My foreman make the calls. You know, I don't call them in. But like I told you in the previous meeting, I'll take them off the list.
I don't want to personalize it.
It doesn't matter to me.
Well, but you are the person that does the hiring and firing, so to speak.
Right.
So you are the department head. That is clarification.
Typically, these policies don't distinguish between the immediate supervisor or supervisor above supervisor. It's just the question, do they supervise them in one way or the other? Are they in a position to hire, fire them, promote them? Where a conflict would be created.
Anybody else have questions, discussion?
Well, I guess the only other one we need to clarify, the final determination as it reads now says the supervisor will make the final determination as to whether or not a situation of conflict exists. And I think what we've mentioned in the past, we'd like to involve at least maybe 2 board members or the individual and the comptroller, not that it's one sole person, again, making the final.
I think Brenda just
Yeah, I
said
think
that was
what-
something that's going to be added.
Well, I was gonna suggest that go to the town board, we change that to the town board.
Okay, that way I can see that. Like I say, it's something we've been talking about, and we need to involve the town board in these. Okay, thank you.
Just so I'm clear, this supervision aspect, that you're gonna have Chris is the supervisor of the whole department, then you're gonna have under him there's supervisors, and you have employees that those, ultimately he supervises, right? But then you're gonna have people that supervise other people who you're not gonna have, if they're related to Chris.
Jim, I have the same situation as Chris's.
I'm trying to get
It
my.
could be that I hire my stepson to work in a parks division, but I don't immediately supervise him. He's supervised by the division head person that I have as parks, or my recreation person, you know, my relative works under someone else. So there's an intermediary between a department head and the potential employee, because there's a supervisor in between the two of us.
I know, but you supervise the supervisor.
We all do though, so you could never hire someone, you're saying, never hire a relative at this point on, is what the answer is?
That's one option. I mean, there are different options.
Is that the way it's written, just
That's,
like
I mean, that's the way I would interpret it.
Okay. Thanks.
Never hire.
But it does allow for exceptions, right? I mean, we could.
We could write an exception, or we could make it open to, you know, in the discretion of the town board to grant exceptions when it's in the best interest of the town. So,
Why is there an exception if you just said,
Because it
What's
could
the-
be in the best interest of the town. We might, you know, it might be in the best interest of the town to have Chris's wife be the senior wing person or something, I don't know.
There's no senior or junior
I
wing person.
know,
I mean,
I'm just using it as an example.
as far as my, it's, you know, if my brother or wife or daughters come in, or my cousins or whoever, if they come in 6 times a year, 7 times a year, that's a lot. You know, I mean, we're not talking thousands of dollars, we're talking $45 a shot. Most of the time, they're the last minute call-in because nobody else can come in.
I think one thing that we're looking at a difference between a department head and a supervisor. The way I'm seeing it, and I might as well use it because he's getting hit on, and he called me at 2 in the morning, is that Chris is the department head. Under him, he may have 2 or 3 supervisors. Those supervisors supervise a group of people. They report back to that supervisor. If there happens to be a conflict or a problem, that supervisor goes to the department head. So I don't really see a big problem in how the hiring is going on. I'm just thinking we're confusing what a department head and what a supervisor is.
No, you're not.
The department head is still a department head.
Can
But supervises the supervisor, so, you know, potentially a supervisor isn't going to dismiss a relative because, you know, then they're subject to retaliation, supposedly from the department head, who is the ultimate supervisor.
Shirley, you have something to say?
Well, I'm just thinking from a human resource sense of it, you need to make it black and white. Any of these loopholes of this and that, and who knows what, and it doesn't work. You either make it yes, or you don't hire a relative.
Don't hire them.
Well, that's why I wanted the clarification in the first time.
Right.
You know, we can have supervisors, but the department head is the ultimate supervisor.
Right.
So,
So either you
Take 'em out.
hire a relative, or you don't hire
Or
a
you don't.
relative.
And there are some policies where they put exceptions in there explicitly, like part-time positions, seasonal positions are not subject to the policy, if that's what you would want to do.
I think there's something to be said for the seasonal people. You know, but again, I think that preferential treatment shouldn't go to a relative even with seasonal hires. That's what I think. So do we have to build that in, you know, to put in something about seasonal? Brenda?
You don't have to, that's an option, if you want to limit it so that you don't have to worry about that when it comes to wingmen or other seasonal employees, parts.
But if you're grandfathering in other people, how can you take those seasonal people?
Well, I'm taking grandfathering in only like right now.
Well, most of these people on his list that are
They're-
so-called
they're
relatives.
They're grandfather,
Right.
grandmother.
Right, exactly.
They're granded in.
Right.
They're off the
The
list.
people for this year are granded in. I
Right.
don't have a problem
Right,
with that.
okay.
For the future, you know, we just need to make sure we don't, if we were to adopt this policy, that we don't provide preferential treatment. That's all.
And it states right now that preference would not be given to candidates
Right.
who are relatives.
Okay, so I'm not clear. Do we have to put in the, you know, something about seasonals or not?
If you want to accept them, we need to put that in there, it's not in there right now.
Well, then I think we should.
We can do that, if that's what the board wants to do.
I would agree with that, because like I say, they're certainly not beating down the door to come in and do these jobs in the morning. So we're lucky we have the ones we have now, whether it be wife, daughter, or somebody's friend, but I think that would be a good option to put in.
Well, this year we had a good system because we put an ad out, and I think there were a fair number of responses, so I'm comfortable, you know, with how that worked out. So what is yours?
So I have some changes I need to make to the policy, and we can bring it back to the board for the next meeting,
Okay.
whatever you'd like to do.
And we can get it so that we can review it, obviously. Wayne, you have something?
Yes, I just like, I have a question that comes to mind, like, if you were working in my department, and Jessica was working, and you had people working under you, could you hire Jessica's daughter, and, because you're supervising her, but she's still in the same department, and, I mean, that's a question that comes to mind. Does that clarify it or not?
I think what we're looking at, Wayne, is that we would, no relatives in the town would be hired.
But,
Oh, well,
but there's no I'm just an employee. Judy's the department head, I'm the employee.
no, I'm the department head, you two are supervisors for me, and, you know, can she hire your daughter is what I'm saying, I
It's a
mean,
good question, because
I don't see where it's coming.
everybody on the board is supervisor of everybody in this whole.
Well,
town.
I'm just saying,
Yeah, I
if,
see.
you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's clarified. I mean, because it's a relative, but not under your direct supervision, she's under Judy's supervision or my supervision.
Right, and it's not your relative and it's not
Right.
your relative.
Exactly.
If you think that would be helpful, then we can put in some language that would clarify it would have to be direct supervision, immediate supervision.
Yeah,
That would
okay.
take care of that.
Thank you, Wayne.
And I'm not working for you.
So this is tabled until the next meeting.
You're gonna prepare a draft and get it to us, and then we'll review it and discuss it at the next time meeting, if it's prepared by the attorney. Agreed?
Sure.
Yes. Thank you.